pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I do have a question on the consent agenda, and it has to do with the purchase of the director vehicle. Since the state contract is not taking any orders, are we planning on looking for new or used? Or,
Yeah, it'll be a new vehicle that we're looking for.
Okay.
It's just as soon as they are on the lot, they pretty much are sold instantly. This way I can have the flexibility of calling Belzers and just tell them, hey, this is what we're looking at, Chevy, Ford. Can you find something out there?
okay, alrighty, yeah, good deal. That's the only question I had. I wasn't sure if maybe we were looking for a used vehicle as well because of supply issues.
No, they believe they can find something. Just might take a couple months.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Matt.
Anything else?
I had a question regarding the fitness center sale of items, and just to understanding more administratively, any funds from that sale is not the city's funds, is that correct? It goes to the joint powers finances?
No, so these were actually purchased by the city and identified as such in the joint powers agreement. That anything that we choose to do with that money, now the intent has always been to put that money back into equipment at the Fitness and Aquatic Center. So unless you have a different idea of what you'd like to do with the funds that we get from that, I don't know if it'll be that much, but there's certainly other equipment that we could probably put that into their recreational related,
When
trying to.
you say the intent was that, whose intent, or where does that come from?
In the joint powers agreement for, when we purchased that equipment, it was like $80,000 worth of additional rec equipment for like basketball hoops, volleyball net, rolling log, a couple other things, whibbits. We covered all of that.
Yeah, I get that part of it, but if the intent of the proceeds to be rolled back into it, has that a city decision to make at this point, or when do we decide what to do with the proceeds?
That's how it's written into the agreement currently. So if we wanted to do something differently, we could probably talk to the joint powers board and have that changed, but.
Okay, so the council has no control over that. It's part of the agreement, existing agreement.
If you wanted to bring that forward, I'm sure we could. I'm just saying, as of right now, the intent is that that agreement says that money will be kept in that for recreational equipment going forward.
Totally okay with that. I just wanted to understand the gymnastics of how we legally got the flow of money there.
Yep. Like I said, we don't know exactly what we would buy with that yet, but we would kind of put it back in that.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be used to purchase anything. It couldn't be for the operation of the facility?
Well, it was for equipment when we put that money in it, and that's how it's spelled out in the agreement currently.
So it couldn't be used for marketing or
I have to look into that.
produce ways to try to get more members, or?
We'd have to look into that
It is
legally.
kind of sad that $45,000 just kind of.
These items did get used. What we've just found, or what they found up there regarding the climbing wall, that they really can't have it up other than for maybe a week or two in the summer when they don't have competition meets going on. So that's very limited. And then the swim bikes that they have out there, there's more of a demand for land spin bike type use. They don't have any of those right now, but there is no interest from anybody in using the underwater bikes that they have. They did get used quite a bit in the beginning, but that was really before it was fitness and aquatic. So it's just kind of changed, and they've changed a number of other programs up there for fitness classes and whatnot too, to try to fit the demand that they have.
Right.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you can just look at if there's any ways that the joint powers can use it in the best interest of the operation, whether it's purchase more equipment or maintenance of existing equipment or whatever.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Nays? Ayes have it. Engineer project update, skip that one. Public,
Oh, actually, I do believe Chris Knutson is online, just to give a quick update.
Hi, thanks everyone. I did include a project update for your council packet. I just want to go through the handful of projects we have going on right now. Main Street project, hopefully we'll be closing that thing out pretty soon. Some things between MnDOT and the contractor to resolve still. The 2022 street utility projects had a handful of sewer services recently repaired, and information from the contractors that they will get a couple sidewalk panels replaced still tomorrow. I guess there's some rain, so we'll see how that goes. But hopefully be able to get that taken care of shortly. And then just updates on the 23 project. We have started our final design on that. With our first review meeting planned for the beginning of December, and the same with the 10th Avenue First Street roundabout project. We have started some more initial layouts, and hopefully we'll get that. Well, that memo will be getting out here in the next couple weeks, I imagine. Here, working with Ken and his group there. So, any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of hang on for the rest of the meeting if there's anything else that comes up.
anybody got anything? All right, we'll move on to ordinance for introduction. Ordinance number 333. Ken, is that you?
Yep, I'll take that one. So I'll give you,
If I can just interject a second, item number 5, just in the event that someone is here from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody here from the public that want to be heard? Yeah. Step up to the podium.
Thank you for listening. My name is Tim Simon, and this is my wife Carol with a company we started called CBDAnswers101.com. So we're just trying to get a handle on what's going on with the new ordinances. I've talked with Jim before, we've been selling since 2019, like a Dozinki and stuff. Now, last year we did not sell with the new products. We're more about trying to educate people. So we're just trying to see how we could fit in, if we can even fit in the town without getting a physical place and building. We're not trying to sell the new stuff with the 0.5 milligrams. There's still 5, what's that? Yeah, go ahead.
It's 5 milligrams, everybody knows what it is.
I know, I'm just a little nervous. So anyway, that's how we're kind of just wondering how that's going. I read it in the paper and all this stuff, so how that would possibly fit our business if we can. I was doing a lot of business with people one-on-one, talking to them, trying to explain how CBD works, and not always selling, but, a lot of times they do online business, but a lot of times they meet at the coffee shop and just talk to help them, educate them on the product. Now, we're not interested in trying to sell part of the slogan is helping people get healthy, not high. We want to help people to learn the health benefits of CBD, how it could possibly help them enhance their life versus alter their life. So that's kind of what we're here tonight, just kind of wondering what the new ordinances entail for sure, and can we sell the old formula? There's the original 0.3 milligrams, like for the tinctures and.
What was legal before July 1st?
Yeah.
If that is still something that is okay for us to, like you said, talk to people at coffee shops and things like that. So just to make that distinction between the stuff that has the THC, the 5 milligram, the new stuff that's legal from July 1st.
So I guess, sorry guys, I hate to interrupt. This is generally a time for people to discuss stuff that's not currently on the agenda. And since we will be discussing our THC ordinance here, actually in a couple items.
We can talk about it.
Yeah,
later.
we can. I didn't
that's
see it
fine.
on where it was. I just thought this was the right time. So.
Nope, that's fine.
That's fine. You guys are good. All right, now move on to ordinance introductions, 333.
all right, so I'll give you a little background on that. So, beginning back in September of 2022, the Planning Commission began discussions on allowing limited accessory retail sales in the I-1 Light Industrial District. Where that initially stemmed from was staff received a phone call from actually a couple of different places out in the industrial park, existing businesses that were inquiring about if they could have limited retail, basically a small showroom in their business where they could have product that is obviously either their manufacturing or their warehousing in their building. Currently, our zoning ordinance does not allow any retail sales in that district. We did conduct research of the number of cities and found very commonly in Minnesota, particularly kind of the metro and slightly outstate area, such as our general region here, accessory retail is allowed up to 30% in many of the zoning ordinances that we did research on. Planning Commission discussed that. They talked about having that 30% be not only to a building at 30% of its gross square footage, but let's say a tenant had less than a full footprint of a building, that it just be limited to their space if they were just leasing a smaller portion of a building. So we did add that language, and then Planning Commission recommended an overall cap so that even if you had a 100,000 square foot building, you're still limited to no more than 5,000 square foot for retail, so you didn't end up with something like a Walmart or a Target out there just by default. So that is the language that ended up going to a public hearing on October 26, 2022. We did not have any public comment at the public hearing, and the Planning Commission recommended that move forward to the council here tonight for an introduction and first reading of that language. So the ordinance is pretty simple. It's just adding as a conditional use these accessory retail sales with that 30% limit, whether it's the full building, the tenant space, and then overall cap of 5,000 square feet. So we don't have very large retail occurring in large building. So
And it has to be related to the
has to be
core
related
business.
to the core business. So again, something they're manufacturing or warehousing in their building. And I wish I could give you exact examples, but the businesses that brought this up did not have the desire to do that yet at this point, as it is not something they have obviously gotten into yet at this point, but it will be very beneficial to them moving forward.
And it's got a little flexibility in there for you selling them too, correct?
Exactly. So again, it's not to completely blow it wide open, but 5,000 square foot of retail showroom on a 100,000 square foot building. It's just a little bit, so if they had some walk-in foot traffic, it provides for that ability. Somebody could come into a showroom and look at a product in a nutshell is what that would provide for.
All right. Buddy?
Ken, does that mean that the actual sale takes place in the physical location? Is that how retail sales is defined?
Correct.
So if you're making something and you sell it retail
Yep.
by mail, that wouldn't count?
No, so we do have places that obviously operate in that model right now, but the desire is that some of the businesses that are doing that currently really see the desire that if people happen to come by, see a product, and then want to take that home with them right there.
Yeah, they want to show the merchandise and display it. And
Correct. Yep.
make the sale.
They don't think it'll be a big benefit, but they wanted to be able to provide that. And I think it's a good way to do that. And again, it won't change the intent of the ordinance at all. It'll just be a accessory type retail.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 333.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. On to 334.
All right, so 334 is related to a Tree City USA program. So I want to give a little background on Tree City USA program, and I have to give full credit to this to Planner Kira Chapman for putting all the legwork into this with the park board and bringing that forward here tonight. So Tree City USA has been kind of on the peripheral of the visioning for the city related to green step cities, and then it's something the park board has looked at for a number of years, but we really didn't know if we could supply the funding to, first of all, qualify for what we're putting into that on a yearly basis. But in doing some legwork on that, we found there's three main components to become a Tree City USA. First of all, you do have to put $2 per capita into urban forestry. In working with Matt Rinda and others on staff, we were able to determine that we're already spending well over that, just with our public tree trimming and right-of-way in public parks and similar, so that no problem, we're able to document that we are already spending that amount, so we might as well get recognized for that. Second thing that Tree City USA requires is to have an Arbor Day observation or proclamation. And that's just a document the mayor can do once a year with obviously the council's approval. And that can happen at a council meeting. And then you also need to have some kind of tree planting process occur publicly, and I know talking to the Parks Department, that's something we could very easily take care of and or visit a school, you know, something very simple. It doesn't need to really cost anything and be a good outreach for the city to do. And then finally, we need to have a public tree care ordinance. So currently, we do have a public tree nuisance ordinance. And we actually had the program review our ordinance, and they suggested some language be added in there for tree care specifically that would let us meet the intent of the Tree City USA program. So what we're looking at here tonight is specifically the amendment to chapter 9201, is currently titled Tree Diseases and Infestations, and simply adding basically 5 new provisions that are on that first and second page of the proposed ordinance. So it talks about the purpose of the tree care ordinance to provide well-being and security of public trees, which would be, again, trees in public right-of-way, and then on public property, including parks. Talks a little bit about what noxious plants are. One thing that came up at the park board specifically was that there are obviously certain trees that we would not support be planted in city property, such as buckthorn, those types of vegetation. There's a few other ones on there, but that was just one example that got brought up at the park board meeting. And then finally, somebody needs to have authority to designate others that work for the city to take care of the trees. And while we didn't have that spelled out, obviously, for the most part, that is shared between parks and public works, depending on kind of which area of the city we happen to be looking at. But the city administrator would be named that, and he can obviously delegate to other staff to do that. Really, the only thing it mentioned for ordinary care of trees is make sure to trim the grass around the tree, remove small branches and twigs that grow between the ground and the first major limb. Very simple, we already do that, so nothing new there. And then finally, a prohibition against harming public trees. And again, we didn't have this spelled out in the ordinance before, but it makes it illegal for somebody to cut down a tree in public right-of-way or on city park property, which we would have called in, and we've had issues with trees getting vandalized in the park. So this just solidifies that a little more clearly in here. And other than that, the remainder remains the same, relating to what trees are a nuisance, which can be anything having emerald ash borer, oak wilt, or Dutch elm. And again, we just changed the language on that to have the city administrator be the designated officer for that. And then finally, included language for noxious plant, which is, again, anything on that noxious plant state statute, including buckthorn. And again, we've been clearing buckthorn out of different areas of city property for years, but this just gets it in the ordinance and matching up with state statute. So really the only cost, other than obviously the time we put into drafting the ordinance, would be like with the Green Step City program, would be a few signs around the city, might be $200 that the park board can cover for Tree City USA acknowledgement as you enter into the city from our major highways. So really nothing new, other than formalizing it in the ordinance language here, but no additional expense other than, like I said, $200 for some acknowledgement signs. But I think it's a good way to show that, you know, we support public trees, and you know, again, we're doing it already. We might as well have some recognition for it. And like I showed in here too, Belle Plaine, Shakopee, Lonsdale, Prior Lake are some of the other cities around here that participate in that program as well.
So I have a question about ordinary care. I know that, at least the parks that I've visited, the trees are mulched.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if that should be part of the ordinary care standard. And I only bring this up because I have a tree in my yard that was looking a bit stressed. And I had an arborist come out to take a look at it. And he said it's compacted soil. So we've got these big mowers going through the parks, and it can compact the soil where it can't get air and water to the tree roots. So the suggestion there was to dig out the grass, dig it down, and put in 3 to 4 inches of mulch, of hardwood mulch in particular, that would break down into organic matter and keep that soil from being compacted. And he said that's, really a big must when you have a lot of heavy equipment in and around the root system of a tree. So I was just bringing it up as a suggestion for ordinary care to ensure that they're mulched.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt, if you know if we do that for every tree we plant currently?
Not exactly like that, but I mean, we do have a system that we follow. It's not wood chips we don't put underneath it, but it is pulverized dirt that we use. So, yeah, I think, I'm not saying your guy's wrong. I think you could probably ask a bunch of different people and they would have different opinions how it's done, but it's something we could look into for sure.
Yeah, because the other remedy would have to have gone in with this big like air chisel and break up the soil and then mulch. But it's all about ensuring that water and air can get back into that root system. So again, I just
Yeah, we
want.
can look into it between now and second reading if you want to
Okay,
move that.
yeah, it would be helpful just to ensure that, we are giving our trees every opportunity to survive, and especially with these past couple of years of drought.
I have a couple of little questions, Ken. Just a grammatical, is it public tree care, should it be public tree care, comma, tree disease and infestations? We have public tree care and tree disease and infestation. I'm not in grammar,
title
so
there, yeah.
it just kind of strikes me. And then do I understand it correctly that this ordinance really just affects public, trees that are in the public domain unless it falls under the nuisance issue,
Correct.
then it's public and private domain that it
Correct.
affects.
That is correct.
Okay. And then in the ordinance, it mentions tree planting a few times, but I'm not really seeing any tree planting standards.
So, could you say that again, Bruce?
The purpose refers to responsible to sustain public trees, institute tree planting and care standards. And in the authority power, it also talks about adhering to the planting and care standards. But I mean,
That's really just that 4A regarding the very minimal, which we may add mulching in there, but just the trimming of any small branch or twig between the ground and the first major ground surface. Yeah, I mean, that's all they're looking for, so you don't
So
have.
should we take the word out, tree planting, because we're not providing any standards for tree planting?
I will look into that. I know that DNR wanted the word in there for the language.
Then maybe we should just say we should use a shovel or something in there.
I'll double check, yeah, I'll double check what they're going for there.
And
No,
then
it's a good question.
the last thing, I mean, you just brought it up tonight kind of, but it makes me wonder, not that I want to get involved in monitoring what people plant, but is there a way that and I'm not suggesting we have city tree planting inspection program, but how do we avoid someone like buckthorn? I'm not saying anyone's going to plant it, but some nuisance kind of, how do we want to control? Do we have any say in what someone plants in their yard?
On their private property. So we do, as far as section 734 for our land and water and ordinance includes what trees cannot be planted on public property. This doesn't obviously reiterate that, but it includes things like we don't allow ash to be planted, obviously for reasons until there's some variant that they can get that doesn't have that. We don't allow the ash or the elm that was affected by Dutch elm. So we've got that covered in that zoning ordinance provision already.
Where does a resident go to see that these are the trees they can't plant?
Zoning ordinance. They're in
Okay.
there. And then we have them on our website too. So whenever we
Okay.
do our verification for that tree requirement for a new home or business for that matter, we provide that to them at that time.
But that wouldn't be, it doesn't need to be in this.
No, we didn't want to reiterate it again.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll take the motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward to the second reading with the possibility of amending section, is it 4A, with regards to ordinary care standards.
And then Bruce, did you want to amend the title as you noted?
I would,
Comma.
I mean,
We
I
could
would
take
find someone that's good in grammar.
Well,
If you feel it's the better,
Yep.
or city administrator can weigh in on it.
Yep.
I try to do less grammar checking than I've had other supervisors do of me in the
It just
past,
seems to
but I
read
will
better
take
if it's a
look at it.
comma than and twice, I mean.
Okay,
No, I believe you're correct.
I'll second.
You can get Grammarly. That works really well.
Okay, there's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, we're down to another section of ordinances. Ordinance 331, amending the Title 6 of the New Prague City Code by creating a Chapter 121 as to, all right, here we go,
THC.
THC.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
So as the council will recall, back to September 19th of 2022, we had the introduction with the council of the ordinance that is in front of you here tonight that would create a licensing program for the new state law relating to THC products, which, as we've talked before, limits the new legally allowed items at 5 milligrams per serving and then no more than 50 milligrams per package. Scott Riggs, as he drafted the ordinance, indicated that while there was no specific amendment to the zoning ordinance, he did suggest that we route that through the planning commission as it were a zoning ordinance amendment due to the fact that it mentioned that the council's desire was only to have this allowed in commercial and industrial zoning districts where retail sales were allowed. So we did that step with the planning commission, held the public hearing on October 26th of 2022. Did not have any public comments received at that time. I know we have some other comment here tonight that got brought up earlier, but before we get into that, I did want to bring up the question of fees had been raised back on September 19th. And then we also talked about this with the planning commission at their public hearing as well. Council indicated having a fee between tobacco and what we charge for liquor licenses. And due to the fact that we would have background and or investigation work similar to liquor, we were proposing a $200 license / application fee, again, which is the same as liquor licenses. But as far as the actual annual license, looking to set the annual license for a THC seller to be $350, which is more than the $200 for tobacco, but well under the $3,000 for intoxicating liquor. One other thing to note, yeah, we had talked previously that this would just simply allow to be in a brick and mortar store, not formal sales was the other thing discussed at that point. I don't know if you want us to address the public comments that we received earlier in the meeting at this time, or do you have other questions you'd like to explore?
Well,
first?
I'd like to give him an opportunity to say again what you got going. Would you like to step up now and
I think I'll start talking this time, but, so the idea, we have two different things I think we wanted to make clear is that, you know, we're in it for the CBD part of it and for the health benefit piece of it and to try to educate people about how that can help their body. We didn't go into this for being able to sell THC. That being said, when we did have the rule change for Minnesota State July 1st, we dug in and we looked at it and what do we want to stand for? How do we want to work this? And so along with that education about CBD, if people would have a small amount of THC along with CBD, sometimes it can work better. So we really did explore that, especially for the nighttime one. So we're open to the idea. And because we were open to the idea, we dug into how it should be packaged and all of the dictation, and we feel like we've been successful at putting that together as a package that the state, I think, would be proud of. I have not seen anything on the shelves anywhere that actually does what the state asked for. Childproof. childproof packaging and clearly saying that it has THC on it, you know, all of the
Empty bottle, just
stuff,
so you know.
all of the stuff on the side about what's there and the QR code going to what's in there. We are outside of the city limits where our business is, and we do online and will continue to do online, believing that that is correct. It's just that if we get into the sticky weirdness of like the Zinke days, we were able to sell our old products after we spoke with Jim Garrison. He reassured us that that was fine. We talked about this, but we left it at home. And then if anybody did want to, you know, purchase it online, they were welcome to do so. The difference is we'd have to ship it even though they were in New Prague. So we just want to be upfront with how our order of business is going, and this, you know, everybody's got different definitions. Every state government has a different definition of how they're doing things. We're not in a place, we're certainly not going to sell enough of this that we're interested in the $375 fee. We're not in it, but we just want to make sure that it doesn't jeopardize our original business. So
Bottom line, I don't want it in the back of Jim's car.
he's never been there that I know of, not to get in there the first time.
No, I think as long as you stay under the threshold and it is strictly CBD,
Well,
CBD, well, at that level of CBD,
Right,
that
right.
it is below the threshold, that it does not rise to this statute.
And again, we are selling this online.
Yeah.
Not to a large margin, but we just want you guys to be aware that we're doing that. And, you know, we've seen many Ziploc bags, that these specific things come in, and we don't believe that that does what it's supposed to do. This is a child-resistant packaging, and, you know, we've taken our, you know, our magnets off our cars and gone into other places, and we don't see anything that looks like what we're doing, so.
But this is still a CBD.
That is the
THC.
anything in it, it would be the THC.
Okay.
one, Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we do have it,
No, you're able to do it, but
in it online.
I think, the same, if you were to come into town, even on a Dozinki type thing, you would wanna avoid selling from a
I think we
non,
would probably do the same thing we did this year.
Yep.
And
Just
as
sell
long
the
as,
CBD products and not.
and have that available to them for online purchases. Yep,
Just clarifying so we're on the same page, so.
yep. Nope, that is fine.
That we're trying to do it the right way, we're not in it for the big buck, we're in it for the right reasons, for helping.
thank you for hearing us out,
Thanks.
just so you know what we're.
Very good. Thanks.
You guys, good luck with your business. Anybody else?
Jim, just to clarify that, the ordinance as it would read, then would it allow you to take orders at Dozinki?
That would be a fine line, but I would say they could take orders. They are not selling the product there. Should they be taking payment for it? Maybe not. But I think just providing information and online availability of it is not a sale then.
I would say if it's not available to the general public at that location at Dojinki, then we should be okay.
Okay.
Correct.
I think I'm glad that they got brought up and is discussed, so we hopefully avoid misunderstandings as it gets implemented. If it gets implemented.
So I have a question as to why no license can be issued to an exclusive liquor store, because there has been discussion about THC-infused drinks. So why are we excluding them from selling?
We are not. The state of Minnesota is with their liquor laws at this time.
Okay,
It is under, alcohol gambling and enforcement, so it is state statute that doesn't allow it right now, which could be changed by the legislature.
so both of our grocery stores have liquor stores. If the grocery store were to sell it, would that be considered an exclusive liquor store because the liquor store is attached to the grocery?
Nope, they're separate. If it's
Okay.
sold in the grocery store area, completely separate of that liquor store, I believe that would be okay to do that.
That would be, and they're not an exclusive liquor store. Our convenience stores and grocery stores are selling on a 3-2 license.
Right, right.
Um,
I'm thinking more along like West End,
Yep,
Coburn's, Hy-Vee.
and Colburn's, Hy-Vee, as long as it is not within, like Ken said, within the official liquor store.
Okay.
Yeah, we firmly believe the law will change within a year, but we believe this currently meets the intent of the law as it's written today. Again, modeled after our tobacco ordinance, and very likely we'll be back talking about amendments to it. But for now, this will work with what the law allows.
We'll see what happens tomorrow.
Hopefully not too.
When does this become, is it 10 days?
This would be, after it's published in the paper, which, the earliest we could get it in would be November 17th. That would actually give us a little time to get, the application put together and, I don't know what else we need other than that really, I guess.
Application and a background package for doing the background.
Again, similar to what we already have with tobacco, probably just change the names.
Okay, we've had discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve city ordinance number 331 as it is presented.
I'll second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any more discussion?
Where does it limit it on?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, ayes have it. Ordinance 332.
Yeah. With your amendment to your ordinance that you did, it could be on their retail sites.
Bruce, think how happy you just made all those young 20s.
What do you got?
21 plussers.
Just with the, with the change in your previous ordinance about having retail areas in industrial areas, conceivably, they could get a license to sell THC in those retail areas.
If they were warehousing and or producing the product there, but we don't have that.
Oh,
right now.
oh, they have to be doing that.
Per that zoning ordinance.
What if they are packaging potato chips?
Sprinkled with it? I don't know.
No,
No, I think
snacks.
So does it change anything that we
I
just
would
did?
we would likely not see anything occur out there. But
All right,
What about the brewery though, if they start brewing
then
THC?
That's a
They would
different
need one.
statute though.
they would need, brewery could have it. They-
But it's under a different statute, isn't it? Isn't it,
Correct. It's under a
it's a
small brewery, state law.
but I know there is some infused beer that's out there. I mean, you can buy it at, wherever, but
Correct.
It's not beer though.
No, it
There's
can't.
no, there cannot be alcohol.
can't have alcohol in it,
And
that's true.
can't
THC
mix
in
the
it.
two?
It's,
So-
it's a flavored sparkling water with THC, yeah.
You could probably even get by with non-alcoholic beer and infusing that because that does not rise to the level of an alcoholic beverage.
Correct. Before we move on though, I did wanna note, I do have on this, ordinance and then the next one, a couple of fees. I actually need to have those approved by resolution, so when we get to Bruce's amendment, I would like to have a minute at the end of that one, we could talk about the fees for these if I could at that point.
I think both of you two are gonna do the next one too. 332 is to, large assemblies.
Yes, so this is another one that we had introduced, and actually I had written in the memo, I copied and pasted from my previous memo and had a couple of typos in there. We introduced it on October 17th, not September 19th. And we talked that would be for any event with over 250 attendees, exempting athletic fields, auditoriums, places of worship, and family events at someone's home. So I believe that addressed all the issues that we had there, and then also does not include areas where you would have a conditional use permit for large gatherings. So really, this was just for the one-off events that could happen at a city park, downtown like Dojinki, and similar. So again, we had that introduced at October 17th meeting. The discussion really had kind of boiled down at that point to what fees we would charge for that as well. Councilmember Ryan was really the only comment I heard at that point. suggesting that he liked the fee schedule layout that Mankato had. So I basically included very similar fees to what they have in there. So new event, $150. That could be a multiple day event, including a street closure, alcohol, and live entertainment. So like a Dojinki, if it's a repeat event, cut the fee in half because you really wouldn't have much changing on that. And then new or repeat event on level B, which would just be probably a single, maybe multiple days, but not have alcohol, but could have a band. And then finally, a level C, which is just a single day, probably in a park area, no live entertainment. So I think those are easy identifiers to have the different levels of the fees, and that's what we've got proposed here for you tonight.
Now, do you, you said something about resolutions. You want this as a resolution or?
When we talk about item 9A, if we could revisit the fees for this in THC, because we need that done by resolution, and I
All right, cool.
intended to do that. And
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Actually, in the memorandum, Ken, if you take a look at the staff recommendation, you might want to
Yep.
delete B.
Yes, and it meant to be amended city's fee schedule for level A and B and C fees. That was my mistake on that.
Believe me, I've been there today.
Okay, I'll take a resolution, I'm sorry, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 332, the second reading of the ordinance of 332.
Got a motion, got a second? Further discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Now we're on to the resolutions.
Yes, Council, on behalf of the New Prague Utilities Commission, we have before you a proposed amendment change to the city fee schedule. As we're all aware of, over the past year, energy prices have increased significantly across the country. New Prague Utilities purchases its power from Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and they obtain that power through a variety of resources, including renewable resources, traditional power plants, and regional energy market. Throughout 2022, SIMPA and the New Prague Utilities have been able to use cash reserves to keep energy prices stable, and we do that through the budget cycle. However, due to the energy prices remaining high for a sustained period of time, SIMPA's reserves have been drawn down to the point that it's become necessary for the agency to increase its energy rates. Normally, this is done around the first of the year, but due to the change, they're doing it here in November. In October, SIMPA Board of Directors voted to approve the rate increase that will be applied to the energy-only component of our billing. This rate increase has resulted in a 15.6% rate increase in the wholesale energy rates to all members, and there's 18 of us that purchase power through SIMPA. At the October Commission meeting, I recommended that the wholesale rate increase be passed directly to all retail rate classes, and at the retail rate equivalent of 0.008 cents per kWh, or approximately 7.3%. That'll vary a little bit depending on whether you're a residential or what type of a commercial customer you are. And that being effective with the November usage billed in December. The rate changes were approved by the commission, and they asked that I bring those rate changes to the city council and seek approval to amend the city fee schedule to include those new rates. It would be the utility commission's recommendation and mine as well, and we ask that the attached fee schedule be amended to include the new rates. And I've also included a little bit of supporting data, should you want me to review that with you. Most of it, just the SIMPA budget, gross revenue accounts, it just shows the decline of capital reserves. Starting kind of at the beginning of the year, we've spent down about $40 million worth of reserves to keep rates stable, and that's no longer sustainable. So rate increases had to be implemented. And then I also just included a chart on there of really where our resources are coming from, and that's not just SIMPA, but actually the whole MISO region, which extends from Canada all the way down to the southern border of the United States, about 3 states wide. Whereas you see that coal and natural gas are still the primary deliverables for the energy fuel mix, and especially coal right now. The railroad has been not delivering coal on a timely schedule. We've only been able to get about 70% of it, so then therefore we lean on natural gas and our renewable resources, and the cost of those has went up, as we all know, significantly over the past year. Gas to the point of almost 3 times higher at times. So it would be my recommendation that the fee schedule be amended to include these new rates. There is currently no adder in there for New Prague. It is a straight pass-through of what our wholesale rates are going through to the customer. And then we'll make the other changes at the budget time, at budget review time.
Bruce, do you have an idea on average for a household in New Prague, what that additional cost would be?
Yeah, typically with a customer that our system average is about 800 kWh per month is what an average retail customer consumes. That's about a $7 a month adder for a customer.
Thank you.
Anybody else got questions for him?
Bruce, do they ever go down?
I've seen rates go down probably since I've been the general manager, since 2012. I think I've seen them go down once or twice, and it's usually about 2% or so. You know, it might change. We're actually, if things would ever stabilize here a little bit, we're forecasting a little bit that in a couple of years we could see some pretty good rate reductions, just because we have a lot of debt falling off on our Sherco power plant. So I'm always hesitant to say that, Sean, you know, with
Right.
We never expected triple digit or, you know, ×3 gas prices in what we're going through today.
Right, but like oil, when the per barrel cost goes down, it goes down at the pump. I just want to make sure that SIMPA is well aware of that too.
And
that if things turn around and the supply gets a little easier, or there's a change in government and they allow more drilling and whatever else, then, you know, it'd be nice to see that SIMPA's aware of that too,
and they are. They're very conscientious about the prices that they charge us, the members, because we're all owners of it. So
right.
They're a non-for-profit, just like the city is. So, yes.
And I don't think that's gonna go down, because I heard a forecast today, they were saying 2023 is going to be a real nightmare. All right.
Are we gonna amend the fee schedule altogether, or just this separately first, or?
No, if we could do, if you had any questions about the large event permit fees that we're proposing and the THC license fee, we could include them all in one resolution here that's in front of you.
I'm fine with it personally.
So the large assembly fees is the same as the THC fees?
No,
Sorry, it's the ones above that.
On the large assembly permit, my memo had a error at the very bottom for B. I meant to say amend the city's fee schedule for those item level A, B, and C fees that are right above the staff recommendation.
Yep, sorry. Yep.
Okay, can I take a motion? Anybody wanna do a resolution?
So moved.
All right, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, resolution B.
All right, so I'll take that one. Final phase of Eastland has been completed. That's the final phase of Summer Avenue on the very east end of Eastland Development. They've completed all the work, and we have financial securities in place to start the 2-year warranty period if approved tonight. by the council. So staff is recommending the resolution to accept project Eastland Phase 2A. And that map is on the second page of the memo if you wanted to see the area that we're approving.
Anybody?
I don't have any questions. I'll make a resolution that we accept the project Eastland Phase 2A.
And I'll second that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
On to general business A.
All right, so item A, I'll take that one as well. We have the selection of a consultant for our comprehensive plan update. As the council's aware, for our 2022 visioning document, we did have the update of the comprehensive plan for our 2022 year to get started, and we have completed the RFP process. We had 5 total proposals we received. We did score and rank the proposals based on the criteria we had in the RFP, and we ended up interviewing the top 3 of those firms, myself, Administrator Tetzloff, and Planner Chapman the week of October 24th. While all the proposals were good, particularly those top 3 firms that we interviewed, staff believes that after the final interviews, we are recommending to select MSA as the firm for the comprehensive plan update. This is based largely off their experience in completing comprehensive plans, both as a firm and the specific team they have assigned to our project, references from other cities, as well as their approach to public engagement, and to complete the plan by the end of the year 2023, all while meeting our budget requirement, which was $75,000. And you can see the scoring matrix on page 2 of the memo, how all the scores actually ranked out from our initial scoring, but that was prior to final interviews. But again, MSA came out on top from staff's recommendation. But MSA was actually the second lowest fee proposer for the work, but had the highest value for hours to work ratio that we reviewed of all the proposals. So I do have a little bit of background information about their firm, some of their references, including the city of Hastings, La Crescent, Oak Grove, Lexington, and Dassel. They do largely work with smaller firms, I want to point out, and or smaller cities, I wanted to point out. Their project timeline, essentially getting the project done within that 1-year time period, starting in January of '23. And then the one item I didn't have in the packet was the contract language, which is the language we're working on getting finalized, but didn't get the final contract in front of you. But we have Scott Riggs' memo and his comments to their contract added. And then one final thing that MSA came back with just before the meeting started here tonight was in regards to some indemnification language that I've sent back to Scott Riggs, but it should not be anything that causes any alarm on our end. So I think, as we've got it with their notes and the final outcome, I think I would be comfortable with recommending approval of the contract, subject to City Attorney Scott Riggs' final review, including his comments here and the indemnification language response that we got from MSA right before the meeting here tonight. So again, a lot of boilerplate kind of language. It really doesn't affect the scope of work or anything like that. It was just protections for both MSA and then the city as the 2 parties in that contract. So, and I also did want to note that Chris Jansen from MSA is on the call here if you had any questions for MSA as a firm as well here tonight.
Chris, do you have a spiel you want to give?
I don't have a spiel, but I'd be happy to introduce myself. And I'm guessing that when we interviewed that you guys can see me pretty good on that TV that's in front of you, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Chris Jansen with MSA. I've been a planner with MSA for since about 16 years or so. We do a lot of comprehensive planning, neighborhood plans, corridor plans, that kind of thing. But yeah, everything Ken said, like I said, the contract stuff is all over all the little nitty gritty detail stuff, not anything out of our scope in that sense. So that's fantastic. I'm glad to meet you all. We're excited to get started, excited to work on this.
prior to coming to MSA, I was a county planner with Scott County. So I'm familiar a little bit with it, half of New Prague at least. But yeah, other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have about anything that's in our scope or our process or anything really. Thank you.
All right, guys, any questions?
I just have some general questions, not so much about the selection of MSA, or I would support that, but just to understand the timeline and things and understand some of the definitions. The Planning Steering Committee, what is that? Who is that?
That is who the council determines it to be. Some cities. That is who the council would determine that to be. Some cities will use the planning commission for that role. We'll be talking about that more when we get started with MSA, but likely would be a mix of maybe some council, planning commission, EDA, park board. I don't know, Chris, if you've gotten any other thoughts on that, but that's one of the first things we will be determining who to put on that committee.
Yeah, we'd be happy to help with you. We'll help with whoever you'd want on it. The thing I would say is if you're not going to have planning commission lead it, a council member or two that are kind of passionate about this, so you don't have, so that we have some continuity between the steering committee and council as well as planning commission. And then, yeah, those other folks around that are interested in growth of the city, redevelopment, all of that type of stuff. Absolutely. As staff, private sector, either way, it's all good. The only other, I would say, if you could get somebody from the school district in there, that might be beneficial usually. And any other kind of the major employers, we have another opportunity. If they didn't want to be a part of the steering committee, we could certainly have them as part of a stakeholder interview or focus group, which we have built in to our proposal. But they'd also be welcome on the steering committee as well, which we have, I think, 6 meetings of the steering committee. So it's not a giant time commitment, but it is a little bit more than, a stakeholder interview. We'd be looking at a half hour, kind of little interview. So there's opportunities for everyone to get involved.
I guess I was just surprised because I assumed that it would be run through the planning committee, planning and zoning.
We could do that, but most of the proposals recommended looking potentially at not just the planning commission, but a wider group, selection of people to give different input, not just narrowly that planning commission input.
I think that would be very valuable. The offset of that would be that there's not necessarily a public forum that people can come to and make comments. I remember going through the process where different days we have some different person at the planning meeting.
Yeah, we used to do it monthly at the planning commission, yeah, so you'd have that input. Chris, I don't know if you have any thought on that, because we wouldn't be holding it at a planning commission meeting monthly where we kind of have the, open forum, I guess, as it were. But it would certainly be different than we've done it before. I'm not discounting that at all. I think it provides a different way to get a wider perspective of input.
Well, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't know that we need to grind through this tonight. I just wanted to understand what the thinking, or what we're seeing here. Because I didn't see planning commission mentioned until May, which I thought was kind of unusual. That we're doing a comprehensive plan and the planning commission wouldn't be involved until.
And their proposal does have monthly updates that are provided throughout that we would obviously share with the various boards and commissions and council, regardless of direct involvement in that process as well. So, no, the intent would be to have monthly information going out where appropriate.
So this would be on our agenda then in December or something to discuss?
Select the steering committee.
Or how you're gonna handle it? Or?
We'll have to work out those details with MSA and how we can get that all in place before we have a kickoff of the process. Yeah, we'll be working on that.
And is this something we're just gonna dump on the planning commission then, or, cause they always did it before, right? I mean.
No, that's what we're talking about, not necessarily doing that. We can.
I just assumed it was a normal role. That's what we did in the past, and that's what I was involved in.
And that's just how New Prague had done it before. I don't believe that as common in other cities. So trying to look at it in a different lens a little bit.
Sure.
Sean, you're planning guy. Do you think you can?
I'm happy to support anything that isn't gonna lead to 3-hour planning commission meetings.
All right. Okay, for action on that, we wanna, no, that's just general business, so.
Just looking at motion to approve MSA and approve the contract, subject to final revisions by City Attorney Scott Riggs in the amount not to exceed $72,200.
So moved.
Second. All right, we are at,
We do need a vote.
I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. The orientation manual.
Yes, one of the things that was tasked to me when I first started was to put together a council orientation manual. At the time, I discussed with council, since we were over a year away from elections, that other things were probably more pressing at that time, but as we've gotten closer to it, I have put together kind of a first draft of the manual that I've included in your packet. Just quickly, I kind of go over some quick facts, some roles, duties, and responsibilities of a council member, hit on our plans and policies, have a section for budget, city department, staff, and kind of projects to know about coming into what would be 2023. And then just a brief page on scale. So I was just, assuming you've been able to look at it, wondering if you had any questions or thoughts on what I've put together thus far. If there's things in there you don't think need to be in there, or you would like to see more of, I'm certainly open to that, so.
Discussion?
My comments is, I very much like it. I think you can tweak it and massage it as you go along. I didn't read it in detail, so I don't know, I don't remember seeing a discussion about home rule charter, and that's the guiding document of what we do here. And the fact, maybe, and when I first started, well, I guess I knew that before, but a lot of people don't understand that there's different types of cities in Minnesota.
Yep.
And maybe just a short 1 or 2 sentence about that, and New Prague is a home rule charter city.
Yes.
And then also, I guess this doesn't matter so much, but I forget, sometime in the financial thing, we're a class 4 city, is that right? Or class, sometimes that comes up and I'm thinking, well, what the heck is that again?
Yeah,
Or
that sounds
4.
right, but yeah, I
Yeah,
can.
some of those little things that, yep, the normal people aren't gonna know what that is, but it's sometimes you run into it. When I started, I always, and I, even to this day, would find it interesting to have a list of the employees of the city, or at least available on our
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
Obviously, there's turnover, so you can't have it in this document, but you could refer that to the.
Yeah, I mean, that'd probably be good to
thing.
keep in the policy drive anyway.
Well,
something
don't
like
we
that.
have that on the phone list that we were issued?
It's on the website. Some of the department heads are on the website.
Yeah, so we don't put everybody on the website, but yeah, I can definitely look at getting a more comprehensive list for access for city council members.
On page 21, you have the reference to plans and policies on Drive A. And I'm not sure that we don't have availability to that drive, unless you meant Drive T,
That is supposed to be T, yes.
and we don't have policies on there yet, but you.
Yes,
imagine you
yeah,
get
yeah,
them
yeah.
on there.
Yeah, and then that's one I'm working on building out.
Okay, yeah, I think that's great to build that out as much you can. And I don't know that, here again, not so much for this document, but that file, to have those more descriptions of the departments, I think is helpful. Like when we interview people for golf course or the other ones, we had that little one-page thing in the interview packet that gives a description of the department. I think that would be helpful for city council members to have a better thing. Obviously, you can put tons of stuff in there, it would be overloading it, but I appreciate that we're doing this, and I think it's helpful.
Yep, I will look at getting some of that stuff put in there.
I think it's good, I like it.
I have to be honest, I didn't read it with a fine-tooth comb.
Oh, Maggie.
I know, such a disappointment. So I would like the opportunity just to spend a little bit more time, and I'll certainly email you if I have any suggestions.
And this is definitely a first draft. I
Yeah.
figure this is gonna be a working, so that every time we've got kind of turnover or a new term coming up, I'm assuming this will be revisited and tweaked.
Since there's no action on that, any other questions for these guys on that? All right, we're gonna renew the animal control contract.
Yes, council, I'd like you to entertain, to renew the contract with Minnesota Critter Getters. Our current contract ends, the end of December. And with the new contract, all the same functioning holds in place, with the requirements of them to maintain so many, cages and their facility at a certain level. And then within the document here, all the bulleted points are part of that contract retainer also. This year, they proposed an increase of $100 per month. This would be the first increase in over 9 years from them. So it would be $1,300 per month, for the contract. I would, make a recommendation to enter into this contract with Minnesota Critter Getters for 3 years, January 2023 through December 2025, with no additional increase beyond the $100 a month to $1,300 per month for the contract.
So, why isn't one of the services to transfer an animal that the owner has not come to claim to a no-kill shelter instead of putting the animal down?
They do work with placement shelters. They have, according to them, they have not put down a cat for several years. They will.
What about dogs?
Dogs also. They work to get them, adopted at a shelter. That is their first course of action.
Can that be in the contract or somewhere in this menu, or memo? Because it goes right from if the animal's not claimed, they get put down.
I can talk to her about that, sure.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that there's an alternate
Okay,
opportunity to keep that animal alive and perhaps adopt it out.
okay.
So can we make the motion
It,
with that consideration?
One of the bullet points is rehoming of unclaimed animals as capable. Yeah,
Well, I don't think that a shelter is necessarily rehoming. I kind of look at rehoming as more of a permanent, and maybe that's just my interpretation.
and I think they will work with shelters or anybody that's available to rehome it. Where, to the degree that it may not actually go to that shelter, that shelter might have contacts with people that are interested in fostering or taking care of animals, and they would come directly to them.
Okay,
But that is the process to try and rehome them.
okay, maybe just a little different terminology, all right.
Okay,
I'm happy then.
all right.
Drop it off at the Bass household.
They can, yeah, just put it in our fenced yard.
Put that in the
Get up
ordinance.
tomorrow morning, there'll be dogs all over the place.
I can only have 3.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to enter into a renewal contract with Critter Getters, starting January 2023 through December 2025 at a cost of $1,300 per month.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes, got it.
Do we try to recoup some of this cost through our fee schedule then?
Our only fee schedule would just be for licensing, for those that choose to license. Some of the costs are recouped, but not a great amount at all.
Sure. I think we're seeing, obviously, increase in costs across the board, just to keep in mind when we do our fee schedule in January, and this is over an 8% increase, I think, so just keep it in mind.
Sure.
Things are going up, aren't they? Okay, next one on the list is future police chief recommendations.
Yes, as the council's aware, Police Chief Garis is retiring here at the end of the year. I guess, so I am just looking to, for permission to be able to post that job internally for a week. That's pretty standard per our employee handbook for positions, that many of them will get posted internally first, and then if no viable candidates are found for a position, the posting will go external. So in this case, I'd be looking to post internally for 6 days, and then assuming that we are able to find a viable candidate, we'd hold an interview process as we would with many of our other positions. As we did with our finance director, I'd ask that if a council member is interested in sitting in on the interview panel, it would be myself, Ms. Robin Pickle, our finance director slash HR person, and then it would be another council member if one of you all are interested in sitting. I have included both the posting and the job description to the packet, just for your review.
And you'll be doing that during the day, right?
Yes.
So under the job description, under education and experience, what is considered extensive experience in law enforcement? And the reason I'm asking this is that I feel that an associate's degree or the technical degree might be too minimal. But if you couple that with extensive experience, because as we all know, we go to school for something, but really you learn as you're doing the job, right? So what's considered extensive?
So I mean, when I read extensive, a lot of that I read up has a lot more to do with what you're doing on the job. It's possible you could be on a job for 15 years, and if you, in this case, let's say you worked a lot of animal control and traffic detail, that experience is going to be different than if you spent even 3 years as a sergeant per se. As a sergeant, you may pick up more experience in those 3 years that you could translate into a chief's job than 15 years of animal control experience. So in this, when I look at extensive, it would really be based off of what sort of duties are being performed in that time, instead of trying to put a specific number on it, where the number doesn't always tell the whole story.
Okay. I think that's fair enough rationale. I still just getting a little hung up on the associate's or technical degree, and would feel more comfortable with someone with a bachelor's degree. But if you have that experience, I think, that can speak volumes for sitting in class and doing classwork.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're post-certified, is that what you're getting at? Yeah?
Yes.
Well, yeah, the certification needs to be there, but it's just, the education versus the experience. And, you want someone in that position that, is well-schooled, but also has a lot of experience. And I just wasn't sure that a 2-year degree would necessarily accomplish that, but thanks for the explanation.
20 years experience and,
Right, yeah.
well, if nobody else wants it, I'll do it.
I'm trying to understand the process, because I think we've chatted about this in the past in different ways, in different settings, in different contexts.
Correct.
So, in Robin's case, in the finance director, you're thinking of having interview, and then if the candidate's successful, then it's just a recommendation for hire.
Correct.
There's no other opportunity for the city council to be involved in any interviewing or questioning or anything like that then?
So I guess I kind of looked at it as similar as to how we've handled other department heads, whether it's our finance director here recently, or looking back at Matt's hiring, from what I understand, since I wasn't here, as a department head himself, really going through just kind of a standard interview process. And part of having the council member sit in on the process is kind of acting as kind of the eyes and ears that can help speak for the council, as well as report back to what's been determined, I guess. And I mean, I'm definitely open to other processes. I was just trying to keep it very similar to department head hirings, more recently especially.
Is that common in cities? Because I seem to see other cities that put the posting out to the public.
I mean, I think it really I think a lot of it has to do with whether it's believed there are strong internal candidates, or if the city may want to go out and really open it up. I know even looking at police, especially what in my experience, and I've never actually hired a chief position while I've been sitting as administrator, but from what I've seen externally, even sometimes those ones are done much more internally, knowing that sometimes there's nuances to a position, and coming in a police position may be much more difficult than, say, coming into a finance role or a public works role from the outside, just knowing the nuances of the job. But I think from what I've seen, cities are kind of all across the board as to whether they'll do internal first or whether they'll open it up and just kind of do everything at the same time. It's certainly something we can open up to the outside public, and do, but just a general posting. I know in this case, just I was trying to follow what our employee handbook kind of spells out already.
Right. Well, I've always been concerned that there hasn't been a process involved, and that there's just been, you know, we certainly didn't do it when Patty left. You know, that one went out.
Yep.
And I just wonder if that, when we just start appointing people, even though they're well-qualified candidates within the department, if the other city employees, if they feel slighted because they already know all right, this individual's been highlighted, this individual's been highlighted, this individual been highlighted. And even when we promoted Katie to sergeant, you know, I don't know how many other officers applied, but did you get the feeling that there was some officers that said, well, I'm not even gonna apply because I already know this person's getting the job?
Katie was just assigned to detective position.
Right.
But
Was there other officers that wanted that though, or? Did everybody get an opportunity to interview for that, or feel like I don't wanna interview because I'm not getting it, I already know that. And I'm not saying Katie was just particularly identified, but it could go across, even not just department heads, but any position or any supervisory role.
no, for our last three postings, a sergeant, a detective, a sergeant, and then another sergeant, there were multiple people that put in for it.
There was, okay.
Yep.
Cause in this,
For each position.
and I guess where I was going with that is, cause in this position, there's probably gonna be one candidate. Would be my guess.
It's entirely possible, but the description does allow for anybody with extensive experience to be able to apply.
Right, and I understand that, but and then again, I'll go back to Patty, where we didn't just, you know, appoint somebody, or that might have had we went outside for that one. So now we have different departments doing different things. Some are doing it just internally, some are doing it, and I'm just curious. And I'm not saying we haven't got great people, we have, in all those, whether it's been department heads or other supervisory roles, but I just wonder if the process should be.
Yeah, and I see where you're coming from, Sean. I think the situation with Patty, if I remember correctly, there wasn't anyone internally that wanted to step forward. I think our previous city administrator kind of asked the question of a few people and received a response that at least that one person was not interested.
So if I may speak up, we did actually have an internal candidate with the finance director position, and it was something where that internal candidate did interview quite well.
Okay.
But it was a situation where when myself, Bruce Reimers, and Councilman Wolf kind of assessed the situation, we felt that Robin, who we ended up hiring, was just a stronger candidate for the position overall.
All right, so then I clearly was misinformed, so I apologize for that. But I also think that it's important that we groom our current employees to be able to step into those bigger shoes, and know that there's an opportunity to grow within the city to be able to progress and be promoted. So I don't have a problem with internally posting the position. And then if that candidate or candidates come forward and the interview panel doesn't believe that they're the right fit, then we look elsewhere. I wouldn't want to work in an organization where I felt that I could never be promoted.
Right, and I didn't want, that's certainly not the message I wanted to convey with them. I'm just wondering if there could potentially be external candidates that might even be more qualified or better. So.
And I would be
and-
okay with that too, Sean, but, not where we're, like we did with the city manager. I mean, that was like $30,000 and, we could have done it ourselves. That's the one thing that I'm keeping in my brain.
Yeah, and I think, if we ultimately did do that, where we opened it up, there should be some type of scoring or preference given to internal candidates. And I full-heartedly agree with you that we should be trying to groom those. But again, I'm just talking out loud. I'm fine with what we're gonna do here. But I'm just thinking as an overall process, just so everybody is consistently following the same procedure.
Sure. So maybe having some type of a hiring policy where it is consistent across the departments. I can certainly see going there so that there isn't ambiguity and a potential for an unhappy individual to make a claim against the city.
I do think this position, I'm glad that we started with the finance director involved city in that method. I like the process. If in general about department head and above, I think we had that conversation a year or two ago about getting more involvement at a certain level of it. And I think maybe the department head and above might be the way, the line to do it. But I think in this particular department, I think it's probably, in my personal sense of responsibility, it requires even a higher sense of due diligence in it, because this is such an important role in a lot of different ways. And it is the tail that wags, it's the only department that kind of wags the tail that wags the dog. This is the majority of our budget and one of the most important services we provide at the city. So I'm a little uncomfortable just having something proposed to me without doing any kind of involvement in it. Just a recommendation I'm not sure what due diligence I felt I would have done if that's just besides that. Not to say that I would need anything, I just have that uncomfortable feeling about it. And I know that way if we have more than one city council person, then it becomes an open meeting.
We can have two. As soon as we hit three, it would
Okay.
become an open meeting.
But there's certainly a lot of city councils that are involved in interviewing the police chief candidates or candidate. That's not unusual. If there's not a strong feeling to do it in that manner, I think this is fine. It's just my own personal feeling. I would want to be involved to at least say I participated, that I did something with it, but.
Well, part of it that came to light too is that the city of Minneapolis just appointed a new chief, right? And they opened it up and there was a couple internal, but there was an external one that actually got it. I don't know what that process was and how he rose above the other two, but certainly the employees, there was, 600 some officers, any one of them could have applied, I just want to make sure that they feel like it's open and fair to them. And again, I'm okay with this right now, and just for time's sake, I don't know if, again, we're kind of under the gun here with Jim leaving in 6 weeks, but if there shouldn't be more thought put into the process.
Yeah, I know, and as the city gets bigger,
At least for department heads and,
Yeah,
yeah.
see,
you know.
I thought about that when you said it before, you know, and as the city gets bigger, we might wanna get a written policy, you know, for hiring people like that, so that's, we don't have to sit and discuss this every time, you know? So, just for this action, you're gonna need, one council member and this action.
If we're looking to go with my recommendation here, I would ask if there's a council member or two that would want to be involved, to kind of sit in on the interview process.
If anybody don't want it, I'll take it,
Well, I think that the mayor needs to also
be there.
make a choice of being there, clearly based on his background. I think.
And I guess I will say, I mean, if the council wants to interview more as a whole, being, what Councilman Wolf mentioned, I don't think that's a problem. We would just have to advertise that the meeting is happening, very similar to, I mean, if we advertise for any special meeting and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's an incredibly important position to Bruce's point, and I would appreciate, at minimum, of having two, but I would like to have it open to more than two, and if that's the case, then it's posted as.
Had you spoken to the mayor about this?
He's been out of town for a week now. I think last I heard about 2 hours ago, he texted me that he was stuck in Atlanta.
Well, I have an interest just because I feel obligated, I feel responsible, that's all. Like,
And the mayor should sit in on it too, I mean, to Maggie's point, he was a cop for a really long time. So I don't know, do you wanna table this, or should we put some, action here?
I mean, at this point, I would recommend if we're going forward to post, we could do that. And if you all want to, sit in on it as well, I can work on setting up meeting dates, for the near future, whether it's before Thanksgiving or right after, that we could have set aside if we've got any internal candidates that do apply, and are qualified.
Yes.
Sean or Maggie, do you have an interest in involved?
I do, yes.
So we're really looking at that regardless.
Yeah, we're already, special city council meeting, so.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I will get this posted tomorrow, to run through next Monday, and then, I will probably be reaching out to each of you individually, since I can do that without open meeting law, to figure out times that work for everybody.
So do you still want this action?
I don't formally need an action to be able to post the position, so I mean, if that's kind of, seems to be the general consensus, then we'll go forward with that.
Sounds good. Joint powers agreement with Scott County Assessment Services covering 23, 20 through 27.
Yes, I'll take this one again. Really, Scott County, has been doing our assessment services, for the last 5 year, or for a while now. And they are just looking at renewing their contract. Within their contract, they'd be looking at adding a 3%, increase basically over the length of the contract, year in and year out, for a total of $6,900. And just of note, we aren't charged by LeSueur County for their side. I know, my previous position, we got charged by the county as well. It was a smaller number because we had less people, but I think counties charging for their services is quite common.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the question, why do we have to pay for them assessing the property when they collect our property taxes?
So I don't know the exact ins and outs of the law, but I think it comes back on cities to be able to set those property values and whatnot in most cities, because they don't have someone on staff to be able to go out and do that, usually contract with their local counties who have that assessment office.
Are there private companies that do this?
It's entirely possible. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it.
We used to have Ed Bowler, an appraisal in Jordan, did it for many years for Prague.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can hire other people.
I would certainly entertain looking into a different service and maybe not lock us in for a 5-year period with Scott County. if it could potentially save us money and get the same result. Because I see a conflict of interest, to be honest with you, of Scott County coming in and assessing, and then we have to pay taxes to Scott County based on that assessment. So what prevents them from
Right.
not keep bumping it up?
I mean, that's entirely true. I think it's common across the country that there's assessment offices within cities or counties setting these levels, potentially bumping their own taxes. I mean, it's very similar to us setting our own budget and then having the authority then to tax it. What keeps us from just continually increasing that budget year over year? As I guess how I would look at that, but
I guess I look at this differently because it's tied directly to the value of someone's home. And we have a tax levy, we do have to be responsible for that because it's, we're the ones that are doing it with a lot of input from city employees. I don't want to be locked into a 5-year period if there's an alternative, and an alternative that may be less expensive. I mean, we don't have to use Scott County, right? It's just convenient because they're there. That's just my input. And does it have to be a 5-year contract? Or is that their recommendation or our recommendation?
that is what they put. They just put forward a 5-year contract with a 3% increase each year.
Can you look into it to see if there is more private companies, because she's right?
I mean,
And none of them people are elected, which we are, so that makes the difference between, if, somebody's unhappy with their assessment, there's really nothing they can do about it,
I mean, so there is an appeal period for your assessments each
Yeah.
March, I believe. You can go and appeal them. And I guess the holding accountable is similar to any other county or city employee. If city employees are acting out, people can go to the city council. County employees are acting out, you can go to the county commission in a very similar way, in that matter.
I'm kind of ignorant here, but Scott County Assessor, is that elected or
I don't believe so. I believe
That's,
that Michael Thompson,
appointed?
is an employee of Scott County.
We can certainly look around. I'm just afraid, I'm sure we're getting some economies of scale and
Potentially.
synergies because they are doing so much other work for other cities in the county. And the other safeguard that we have is that it is a statutory requirement, so it is followed through the taxation department. They have to meet, every assessor has to meet certain standards. And so there's an audit of every assessor, so I think that covers some of it. I'm afraid we might find that the private assessors are gonna be much more expensive if we could find someone. I think a lot of the other individual assessors that used to do it, they got away from it. It just wasn't fun to do. And unless you do a lot of it, there's not economies to it.
I can see your point to the economies of scale. I just found it really just odd. And I wasn't sure why we actually paid them to do our assessments, but
Well, we could have
Thank
our
you for
own
the
staff,
explanation.
city assessor, we could have somebody on staff do it too,
which would be,
the same issue.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure it would cost us more than this to have, because it would be a full-time job.
Ken, didn't we have the Scott County Assessor come in and explain?
He's
once?
coming.
Yeah, I think, to Maggie's point, I'd asked that same question years ago and I kept seeing it, that there was just no control. It just seems like they can set their wage and their increase and I didn't understand exactly how big his office is. Is this one guy? Is it, I don't know.
I know there's at least 2 that do the assessments, because I did call when I got my assessment, and I went online to get the description of the property, and it was wrong. And they were delightful to work with. They answered my questions and they made the corrections, so they did everything, to satisfy my particular issue. So I know that there's at least two people, because there were two contact numbers.
And if we were to employ somebody, it's gonna cost us a lot more than this.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we were the city, where obviously it would, so, anyway, I just needed to ask the question, because it just seemed really, really interesting, because I think this is the first time that I've been on council that I've seen this contract come across, so.
Yeah, my question always was, is that, is every city in Scott County paying this exact same thing, or is it based on our population, or is it based on?
In my experience, it's generally based on population and amount, so, if you had a lot of commercial, obviously that'll affect it too. But yeah, generally it seems to be based on workload from what I've seen.
Well, and I guess maybe the nice thing about this too is that the 3% increase each year isn't so bad, and we're adding more houses, we're building more houses, and so it's not taking into consideration, you know, this amount of money per 1,000 houses, or whatever the case may be, so.
I'm a little confused by the 14 or 1,300 or 3%, which is the guiding? Is it whichever is lower, or 3% of what? The previous number?
That's a good point, Bruce.
I just don't understand.
So I know Robin's been working with them. From what I understood, it was basic, so the amounts are set in the contract is that 1,300, 1,400, 1,400, 1,500. And I think she was just signifying that it was roughly a 3% increase year over year. Yeah, if you look in the contract, it lays out those specific amounts, not the plus 13 per hundred or plus 3%.
So in 2023, you got the 44,000, and then 3% of that would be the, it would go up 45 in the following year, and that's where the 3% is?
Yeah, she was taking the rough math of what that increase was
Yeah.
each year, just as an explanation.
Yeah, so the $1,300 is just a little bit rounded up. So if you take the 43,1, multiply it by 3%, it's $1,293, $1,293. So she just rounded it up to $1,300. So I think, Bruce, it is confusing the way it is written here, so we should just maybe be putting.
Be worried about the dollar amount, not the
Right,
percentage.
yeah.
Yeah, if you look through the actual contract itself, the things in parentheses are not even mentioned, in the contract. It was just that dollar amount for each year.
Well, we need to take some sort of action yet tonight, so Maggie, do you want to, should we say table this, or what do we want to send him out
I
on
think-
a journey, or do you want to?
So it's a recommendation. Are you asking for a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if someone wants to make a motion, that would be fine.
So move. Second? I made a motion. Is there a
So your
second?
motion is just to approve this,
Yep, to approve what's in paper, right in front of you. Going once?
I will second it. I'm just a little,
Okay. Well, it's up to discussion now if you've got any more questions.
no, I have a feeling that it's totally fine. I just, 3% over the next, I mean, if we get inflation down to 2%, if the Federal Reserve does it, then 3% annualized every year, compounded every year is probably above the inflation rate, so but I think we're getting a deal anyway, so, and when you look at the big scope of our budget, this isn't a material number. So that's how I'm gonna rationalize it.
So we're not even gonna take a look? If there's other alternatives?
I'm already made my second, so.
No, but I mean, because we had discussed that.
We can change it.
Well, I don't know what Robin, how far down the thicket we are with this, and if it's something that is time sensitive. I didn't realize we had a long-term contract with them in the past, but.
So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I know looking at the contract, their first, action, it looks like it would happen April 1st. Which would just be kind of looking at the going forward data. So, I mean, I do think, I mean, if you want, I can take the next 2 weeks and see if we can even figure out if other things out there exist.
I'd like to know how did he arrive at the 3%?
I would guess they're trying to do future budgeting, knowing department staff needs as well as increases in salaries and labor costs.
Yeah, that's just it. I'd like to know how big his office is, you know? I mean, if he's running it, if I felt better that our Scott County commissioners were watching it, you know, and being a budget hawk, or is there people sitting around and, you know, it's just a bloated government?
I guess I would say in response to that, if you're looking at it as a 3%, I mean, whether it's one person or 20 people, 3% of an increase on a budget is 3%. If you're assuming increased costs for health insurance and potentially salaries, whether it's a COLA or just a normal increase or maybe no increase, it would not shock me that costs are going up somewhere between 2 and 3% on the low end, quite frankly, to Bruce's point, year over year with the way inflation's going at this point. And I mean, I can definitely look into their department. I don't know if it's going to be anything that is groundbreakingly revolutionary that we end up uncovering, though.
Yeah, would you two consider, having somebody come in and explain it to us, or?
It's the cost of doing business. When you think, they have a vehicle, they're tooling around, they do have salary increases, health insurance increases, that sort of thing.
I get that. I'm always curious, and 5 years ago when this came up, I asked the same question. I think Mike Johnson at that time had him come in. I don't know if it was the same Michael Thompson. Has he been the same auditor for?
He's been there for quite a while.
Is it? Okay. But he did come in, right?
And I can certainly ask him. I know that he makes quite a few stops both now and then. Generally, his information tour ramps up in the spring after everybody's new property values comes out. He ends up making appearances at every civic organization in Scott County to explain rates and why everyone's values are going up. But
And this is rather time sensitive?
that I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I know that these services would kick in January 1, 2023, but I don't know what their workload looks like, if they're hitting the ground running on January 1st or how that looks.
Would you two feel more comfortable if I withdrew the motion and we call the guy in?
I think I'd like to approve it. I just want to get, if we could have him come in and explain exactly how he arrives at just the 3%, or if you can just find that information out and that somebody's, he's not just hiring more and more people. And I just want to make sure that somebody's watching the budget. And I don't always think Scott County commissioners are
Right, exactly.
big budget hawks.
I agree with you. But there is a motion on the table. There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Reluctantly.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Well, we could still ask staff over and above this to check it out to see if there's.
Could you do that? Could you
It
have,
is on my note to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And you can ignore the back. Apparently, an old memo somehow got photocopied onto the back.
I was gonna congratulate you guys. I thought that was a good,
Money saver.
money saver.
Yeah.
We're using old paper.
Budget hawks over here.
Yeah.
Trying to save where we can.
Well, in the scheme of things.
Well, I appreciate you trying to save paper.
That's,
All right, next is 10F, which is an IT security policy update.
yes, coming out of the risk assessment that we had done earlier this year, staff has started looking at updating policies, because I know speaking with CTS and True North, our biggest deficiency as an organization is just the lack of general policies on what we are willing to do. They did send us a quite extensive folder of examples that we could use. And there's one thing I quickly learned, that there's a lot of policies out there. That being said, CTS kind of said, well, there's kind of two ways we could approach this. We could either take the next, I think they said they took about 3 or 4 months and as an organization basically dug deep and created a whole book of policies. Or we can start biting them off as we can grab them. Knowing that we don't have the bandwidth internally to be able to, well, let's just all take 4 months off of our job and work on IT policies and procedures. I opted to just kind of start grabbing what I could and continue to do that in the future. And so what you have in front of you now is what would be the beginning of our IT policy handbook. First policy is naming an IT security officer and kind of who would be considered responsible for keeping the policies up to date. At this point, looking at it, we all try to talk Matt Rinda into it, but he wouldn't take it as a public works director, so I think the next choice falls back on myself. Just kind of as the overarching responsibility for the IT policies, many times delegating out, even whether it's to other employees or CTS to help me kind of keep everything together. But that was the first policy. Second policy that is in there talks about password management and multi-factor authentication, which we have already looked at using ARPA funds to help get all of our devices up to snuff with multi-factor authentication, but then also just kind of laying down some general password policies for employees to follow when they're creating their passwords. So I guess what I'm looking for tonight is any comments on the beginnings of this handbook, and then if there not being any, letting me know who I should set as the security officer. Like I said, Matt Rinda is a good choice, or kind of approving what I have so far.
Can we just appoint Ken to it?
We could. He was the IT specialist, I think, as the youngest department head for many years, but
Yeah.
You got time after your Little Mermaids coaching?
I'm now the youngest department head, so.
So the IT security officer, let's say it is you, Josh.
Yes.
That would be a separate person from the administrator of password management and multi-factor authentication. So for example, you as the IT security officer shouldn't necessarily be the same person that does the password management.
So the idea with password management, I think, is more managing your own individual passwords. Security officer would be kind of in charge of making sure the policies are all in place.
Okay.
And it probably would actually be a decent checks and balances to have somebody else involved in that process, really making sure that the policies are in place, and then doing a general review to make sure that nobody is using cat 123 or something as their password.
Right, and then that's something that CTS can also set up within the application, that it has to meet a minimum criteria.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And then those passwords are changed every so.
Yep, and that can be set up in the system as well.
Right, okay.
And then the security officer, is that gonna be like a term? Are we gonna change this like in a year or so?
My thought was that basically it would assign somebody within the organization. If we had an IT department, it would most likely be your IT director.
That's why I was thinking.
But I think in this point, it would basically be appointing the role to a position, so that if we appointed it to the city administrator or the public works director, that would just be that person's role. We could look at.
Well, why can't you take
possibly-
it then?
I mean, I could. It's just one of those roles that none of us wanted.
We're down to you now.
We look at Bruce too. I mean, Jim, we can make him the security officer. But it is something that I did not consider going through and having changed every year, but really for continuity's sake of just having a single position within the organization, it's just kind of their role, similar to our police chief being our emergency management director. I would foresee this being the city administrator until a day 75 years from now when we get large enough to have an IT director, that it would then become their role at that time.
So it's Josh
Has anyone else within the city expressed interest, not just amongst department heads, but?
I guess I haven't put it out there for other city employees. Like I said, when I put it out there to department heads, everyone recommended Matt for it, but,
All right, then, there's no motion to it, but, looks like Josh, you're doing it, huh?
Well, hold a second, gee.
I mean, I can definitely put it out there. It did feel to me like a little bit higher responsibility, which is why
Sure,
I kind of kept it with
sure.
department heads
Yeah,
at this
but,
point.
but there can be an IT security director, maybe with some, oversight, right? Because there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, but there might be someone that this is just really their niche and they really enjoy the IT. I don't know if we have anyone like that, but, so I certainly would entertain at least talking during a staff meeting or something and asking if anyone's interested. In all likelihood, it would not be a promotion, right?
Correct. It would just be a title and lots of responsibility
Right.
dumped on you.
Right. Do you,
Actually be an assignment
pardon?
to your job description already.
It would probably, it'd be the last bullet point, other duties as assigned.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any strong feelings that there's somebody out there that,
I guess I have not heard from anybody that they seem, or even, I guess,
do they know that the IT security director is even out there? I mean,
not from what, if I was a betting man, I would say no.
okay, so there hasn't been any discussion internally that someone might say, I might be kind of interested in that. I'm
Correct.
just curious. It's,
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity for someone to gain some experience. In the event that we do have an IT director, maybe they can step into those shoes.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
I just think at this evolution of where we are with IT, that I think you are the person until it evolves and kind of would get organized and it can be somebody else or some other position. But I see a lot of these tasks, you can certainly have a security information or an information security assistant task being delegated in their job descriptions for certain things. Quite often I've seen some of these tasks in HR because they're a lot of times orientation, education, follow-up. Every year you go over, why did you use that password, and you do the audit. And a lot of times, the way you're structured now with your department head meetings, a lot of these kind of things can be discussed and reviewed as part of the agenda item. So if you had a staff person that can set that stuff up and plug in every month or 2 months or whatever to try to just get the process in place and then develop people and expertise and things like that for it. But I think what we're talking about is really just a nameplate at first to try to get something started and then figure out to what degree can we manage it, because we really are gonna be relying on outsourcing it to our technology person, our company.
Yeah, the
So
CTS.
we're just trying to have a local understanding and presence and being able to keep our nose clean, making sure our staff are well-educated and that they don't make any gigantic mistakes that are gonna cost us.
Yep.
So, but I would encourage you to try to figure out ways that you can cut and paste pieces of this to different people, or positions rather.
Yep.
And hopefully make it more of a team thing that's talked about, because there's no way you or one person is gonna be able to see if the person that's sitting at the utility shop is screwing around with their computer or something comes up on a regular basis. We just don't, so we have to have department heads and everyone kind of actively involved in understanding what our security risks are and monitoring them and being involved in it. And that's how I'm used to seeing it being done.
Okay.
Try to implement it
Guess you're it.
organization-wide. But, and they can help you figure out how you can move some of the tasks around.
So it's Matt.
So it's Matt then.
Anything else on this topic?
No, I guess I'm just looking for a motion, as our lead policymakers to implement our first the makings of our first IT policy handbook.
Anybody want to make that motion? I'll make the motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Nay? Ayes have it. On to the miscellaneous, minutes from the golf, and utilities, planning and utilities. Anything on that?
Nope, just minutes, from the October Planning Commission meeting, for your reading pleasure.
Any of you guys got anything on that one? No. Okay, on to B, it's update on new business, chalk it up. What is chalk it up?
Chalk It Up is the, pool hall that was gonna open in, the 114 West Main building. I had met with Denise York, the owner, a couple weeks ago. Had a follow-up meeting last week with her. She was gonna provide some statements, other additional banking statements. She did bring those in today. I will take a look at them and follow up with her. It appears I need another couple months of statements from her yet, but, still working through that process. She had submitted a alcohol application, which we tabled until we could do a complete background. And I know city inspections are still working with her to get her building up to par before they would give her a certificate of occupancy for it. So we're still working through that. I did receive a call, a follow-up call today from an attorney, in inquiring what our process is. I shared with her where we were at, and that I would need additional statements from Denise York. So I will follow up with Denise tomorrow yet, to try and get those. But we will keep working with Denise to get her through the process. Currently, she needs to get, a plan drawn up for her site before she opens up to the public to make sure it is up to code and, ADA accessible. So she has to work on that. That's her biggest step. I did share with her that I could not recommend to the council, yay or nay on her application until she has taken a substantial step forward to being able to open up to the public. So that's where we're at.
So, and that was just a general info.
Yep.
All right. Anybody got questions for him on that one?
Nope.
All right, let's move on to miscellaneous. Matt, you got anything? Bruce? Nothing. Jim?
Nothing.
Ken?
Real quickly, general, election tomorrow, polls open 7 AM, close 8 PM, sorry, 7 AM to 8 PM. Not on the calendar for upcoming meetings, but you guys had approved meeting on November 17th at 7:30 AM to canvass the results. So just a quick reminder on that. And we do need 3 of you at that meeting.
Where is the polling place?
410 Central Avenue North at the CEC Fitness and Aquatic Center Gymnasium, where we had primary and then where we actually had elections in 2020.
And then we're gonna meet right here, 7:30 in the morning on the 17th.
Correct. Should be 5-minute meeting.
And Bruce is bringing rolls.
Yeah.
No, Dwayne said he was.
That's right. He's donuts and coffee. Hey, he's a cop. Go ahead.
That's all I
What
got.
do you got, Josh?
I got nothing further.
Maggie?
I don't have anything this evening.
Sean? Nope. Bruce? Rick's got nothing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Good job, Rick.
All right. I have to go to the bathroom so bad.
We did all that without.